Добрый день.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues and friends. I would like to thank all participants of this session, International Transportation Corridor North to South, moving forward. This is a particular name because a year ago at Transtech we had a round table, ITC North-South, looking for mutual benefits. And that's exactly a dialogue between Russia and Iran started, and the Minister of Transportation of the Russian Federation was present. We identified bottlenecks and we found the ways of tackling them. And this year, the session of ITC North-South moving forward will be where we will summarize the results of international development in this corridor. We find the items to form cargo flows, and we identify priority, and we make sure we coordinate our managerial efforts. It is quite symbolic that our forum and our session today is happening in the beautiful city of St. Petersburg. You know that in the year 2000, that was where the agreement on ITC North-South was signed between Russia and the Islamic Republic of Iran and India. In year 2020, under the order of the Russian government, a set of measures to develop our ITC was signed. And as part of these measures was setting up an autonomous non-commercial organization, the Direction of International Transportation Corridors, and I work in this organization. Setting up ITC requires major systemic actions, as you know. I would like to give the floor to the General Director of our organization, Alexander Isaev, and he will share latest news, how the directorate is involved in developing ITC North-South, and what we do in this respect. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, participants. I'm happy to see you at our roundtable. Thank you for finding time in your schedule to join this roundtable. I would like to start by saying that we do develop ITC North-South, and our directorate makes colossal efforts to tackle bottlenecks, to increase infrastructure, physical infrastructure, and to perfect legal base. Because, as you understand, three countries need to work at the same corridor, and we have interested countries as well. So according to ITC, we made sure that the legal frameworks, we made a forecast for cargoes by 2030, classified by the cargo groups and transportation groups. We identified bottlenecks and ways to resolve them. And we set up a number of railway steps, but Sergei Alexandrovich will speak on his behalf for his core business. We also prepared the draft of a governmental decree that will approve the ITC North-South roadmap, and then a colossal construction will start along with signing of international agreements. The cargo base, as we calculated, we hope will be implemented at this promising avenue. And we need this avenue for foreign trade of the Russian Federation because, as you know, we faced some restrictions started February 24. That was in a nutshell. Thank you very much. Indeed, we work at the federal governmental level, and our directorate helps to generalize and put together all goals, objectives, bottlenecks, and way to resolve them. North to South corridor was an object of our care for many years, but of course we were not very active as now, because now it's a focus of attention even at the presidential level in the Russian Federation. So that's a priority, this corridor north to south. Ramazan Gabjabalovich Abdullatipov once said that world must be governed by philosophers because they give the trajectory of development. And Mr. Abdullatipov set up the club North to South, and at this club he managed to bring experts and people who are interested in developing this avenue. And it happened before sanctions. Unfortunately, who was not able to connect with us. He was called urgently to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but his representative, Yekaterina Dronova, will be with us. Can we connect Yekaterina? Hello, Yekaterina. Thank you very much, Natalia, for your warm greeting. And just to pick up where you left, the world must be governed by philosophers. Well, and if we add good roads to these philosophers, yes, our life be much easier. And Mr. Abdullatipov, indeed, he left urgently to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the important meeting, but he was like a prophet saying 10 years ago that we need to develop this multimodality and the corridor. Work groups were set up and documents were prepared. And today, this club is very active. And let me tell you that the club has signed a big number of agreements to set up joint ventures in order to fill in with cargo this corridor north to south. And in parallel, to improve the system together with the financial University of the Russian Federation, we develop an MBA master program, master degree in Moscow, and we will launch this curriculum pretty soon. And my presentation, my speech is very brief, but let me tell you that multimodal transport corridor north-south is a universal logistic corridor. In addition to that, it is a way to integrate different cultures and even different civilizations. And this dialogue we are forced to build and to make sure that cultural processes do integrate. And therefore, we launch another avenue, diplomatic and cultural support to this corridor, where we facilitate this integration by ways of soft diplomacy. And this soft diplomacy is happening at the Caspian Sea and wider at Eurasia. Thank you very much for being able to present our club, and we want you to be part of our discussion. Thank you very much, Ekaterina. Indeed, a dialogue between Russia and Iran, as I said, started at Transtech, and the first meeting with the Iranian ambassador was part of that forum's agenda. The deputy transportation minister was the first one to have a meeting, and indeed it helped a lot, a dialogue between Russia and Iran. And probably if you follow mass media, you see the dialogue continues, and big delegations of Iranian business people arriving to Russia help to improve our economic and transportation links between the two countries. North-South corridor is wider than just relations between Russia and Iran. It includes relations with Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenia. And of course, we're happy to have these links and facilitate as much as we can these relations. Now to India. India is a major country which plays an important role in ITC north to south, and we want to understand when it comes to cargo flows. I would like to give the floor to a Vice President to the Promotion Council of Free Economic Zone of the Ministry of Commerce of India, Shrikant Badiga. Can we have him connected? Good afternoon. Shrikant Badiga, can you hear us? We cannot hear you, unfortunately. No, we can't hear you yet. Is your microphone on? Good afternoon, Srikant. We are happy to welcome you here. You can hear us, but we cannot hear you. But you can hear us, right? Can you hear us? Okay, we're having some technical challenges, but stay calm. We'll connect you. Yes, now we can hear you. Thank you.
Да, спасибо.
Yes, we can hear you. We are very happy to welcome you here. And would like to give you the floor. Can you explain the way, the outlooks as India sees when it comes to providing cargoes to North-South ITC?
You people hear me now?
Да, очень хорошо, спасибо.
Perfectly well, thank you.
Yes. Very good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be part of this prestigious forum. When I was been connected to this particular forum through Ms. Ella, and we have been pretty excited. Actually, I was supposed to be in person and give a presentation. Is it possible to share my presentation, which I shared with the people?
We are checking, yes, it seems to be possible. Just give us a minute to connect your presentation.
To give my thoughts. See, India is looking at this particular concept, especially getting associated with the Russia and other countries in a very big way. In the recent past, you can assess the bilateral development between Russia and India in a big way. At India are planning to come up with an advanced logistics policy. In the last couple of months, the government of India has launched logistic policies which which connects the interland. It is most of port based. We are concentrating on development of ports where the logistic companies, global logistic companies, play a very major role. We are welcoming these logistic companies first by showcasing our policies of ease of doing business and cost of doing businesses, especially because the government of India is concentrating more on development of manufacturing hubs. As the people know, any country which depends upon or welcomes more of foreign exchange, this particular foreign FTWs, that is free trade warehousing zones, plays a major role. So we see in a lot of synergies with the logistic companies worldwide. And if I would like to also mention that we have a forum, people must be familiar with the World Free Zones Organization, which is a global body which interacts or we get associated with bodies like OECD, World Trade Organization, and World Customs Organizations particularly. So the World Free Zones organizations are also advising Ministry of Commerce through EPCS about development of free trade zones, logistics hubs. In the recent past, the government of India has come up with something called Gati Shakti, that is direction and speed. We understand that it is not only development of manufacturing hubs or whatever, but what is important is connectivity, highway connectivity, railway connectivity, portway connectivity, and airway connectivity. So there is where we are concentrating.
Unfortunately, you're frozen on the screen. Mr. Badiga?
Advanced.
It could be that the connection is not stable, but now we can hear you. Please continue.
India's progress and India's advancement in development of logistics hubs with an exclusive logistics policy, which you people can definitely find on the websites also. I shared with Transtech people also in last week. This particular logistics policy of India is welcoming global companies to come and set up their warehousing logistics hubs in India. So we do understand, as I've been trying to repeatedly saying, that we do understand the importance of syncing this infrastructure of special economic zones, free trade zones with this logistics hub. So I would like to stop here, and I hope I answered your question. And I would be more happy to share my presentation when given an opportunity again.
Да, я хотела попросить
Yes, we will ask technical experts here in the room to launch your presentation on our screen.
I can take up in the meanwhile any other question I can take up and answer it.
Шрикант Бадига.
Он не делится экраном.
Вы могли бы...
Could you share your screen so that it will be on your screen? Perhaps some people in the room have questions to our speaker. You can ask those questions directly.
I'd like to take this occasion to acknowledge the efforts of Ambra Abkhazia, SEZ, Ala Makastico, who have given this opportunity to connect with the people.
Да,
And once again, it is the World Peace Zone organization, which can be a major partner in connecting all our losses worldwide.
We certainly understand that the special free zones are the base for the transportation corridors, and it is important to provide interaction between such zones, not inside the Russian Federation, but we will also have a representative speaking here from the Russian Federation, talking about the free economic zones, and he will emphasize the operation of the company called Lotus. We hope that he will have a contact with them, if you don't have contact yet. Iranian economic zones, their representatives came to Restek platform to discuss. They had signed an agreement with St. Petersburg Economic Zone, and I'm sure all countries are concerned. They're interested in facilitating the procedure of trade in order to develop our transportation routes and shipment routes. I don't know if you have still the opportunity to connect your presentation. We're not able to see your presentation. Let's have another attempt. Let's attempt again. It seems that India is far away, but we will try again.
Yeah, one more thing. I've been in touch with Lotus SEZ people. Yesterday we had a lengthy discussion, and tomorrow again we are getting connected. I'm very happy to note about their development, the way they have planned to connect these three nations, India, Iran, and Russia. So they are going to select two SEZs from Russia, two from Iran, and two from India. So these two from each country we will be coming out with to develop this particular strategy which SEZ Lotus has come up. Lotus SEZ has come up. So we most likely tomorrow, once the meeting is done, we will sign an MOU with them. One Mundra SEZ was already selected by SEZ Lotus to be part of this consortium. People that it would certainly would love to come forward and give policies also to facilitate this particular strategy, which was initiated by the Russian government and SEZ Lotus. Very welcoming thing. And during sorry, you were saying something?
Пока, к сожалению, нет.
Unfortunately not so far. Perhaps I have a question to you, Shrikant. Perhaps there are some peculiarities of operation of the specific economic zones in India. What is their advantage? Some specific taxation regime or specifics of the cargo storage? It's of interest to Russian auditoria, to Russian.
And this is what would attract more traffic to India. In SEZs of India, you have the entire exemption of taxes of both customs and local taxes. You can import any item to manufacture in your special economic zones, and almost all the taxes are free. Your land costs, your regular costs, you get a better price for your power, and land is also given at a good price. The property taxes, if the project is really good, the property taxes also will be considered to be much dearer. All that apart, the government is coming up with a very good scheme for such projects like for free trade zones within the SEZs, which would allow you to also do when store your incoming traffic in the logistic step, and also promote and market trade it in the domestic front. So SEZ is still a tax-free regime and most advanced thing. And very shortly in the month of December, Government of India is coming up with an more filtered SEZ with more benefits to the industry.
Хорошо.
Thank you. We have some internal issues with connection in terms of connecting your presentation on the screen, but I hope that we will continue cooperation with you. We see that you have an active approach for development of our relations. We'll be glad to see you in Moscow, and we will provide you the platform for discussion at the Directorate to discuss our specific economic zones, to discuss ways of cooperation. Thank you very much for participating in our session. We will continue further on, and I'm sure you'll be eager to listen to our next speakers. And actually, yesterday, in course of the forum, we had a discussion about the practical application of our efforts with the General Director of Siddhartha Logistic, with Nishal Padya, and I'm sure that presentation will be switched on the screen. We will see some practical items in terms of interaction with Republic of India. Could you please put presentation, and Mr. Nishal will give you the floor.
I wish to first thank the organizers of this event for having me here. It was, of course, a very last-minute decision to come here. I came to know from the Mr. Badiga, who just spoke now. Actually, we operate under the Vizag Special Economic Zone. We are amongst the the top services export company in Vizag, and that's how when Mr. Badiga came to know that the event which is being organized here is in relationship to logistics, and it is in relation to the development of the North-South corridor. He connected me, and I was actually at the airport traveling, and I connected because this subject was very important to me. I would like to, just before I make the presentation, a few things very important. In the last session, the moderator said that, to remain more focused on the subject, which is more important for the audience here. So I'm not going to be talking more on my company slides. They will be more available to you on the website, but I'll be speaking more on the practical side of it because we are all from the trade and logistics. The government of Russia, government of India, government of Iran, they are going to make a set of rules, regulations, procedures for us, but it is for us who are from the trade and the industry to come forward and make sure that this trade lane starts working. And I would like to connect here is that why it is so important. I was invited by the Ministry of Shipping and Surface Transport of Russia during 2002. I had visited Moscow. I had a short agreement also signed with the government of Russia, accepting our bills of lading as a single document, multimodal document for negotiating in the banks. I was so excited that this route is going to be started now, and it will be a short route. It will help our trade grow much more between Russia and India, but unfortunately things didn't move. It has taken 20 long years now, but I'm now very excited that this thing, I think this route will definitely work, and it should work. It's because this is the most practical option for developing the trade on this trade lane. So I'll just switch on to my presentation quickly. Can we go to the first screen, please? No, the first screen. No, you're going back. Please go to the top screen. Yeah. From here, just go to the next one, please. Yeah. We are basically, I very shortly to introduce, because if I don't introduce my company well to you, you will not know us well. And we are basically a company, 3 companies, and we make Siddhartha Logistics Group. One is a customs broking and shipping, forwarding, and transportation company. The other company is a specific free trade warehousing zone. You must have just heard now what we have, Mr. Badiga said that free trade warehousing zones are significant and very important in India now for the development of the international trade. And we are completely sold out for this idea. And that is the reason why we have made a separate company altogether focusing on free trade warehousing zone. The next company we have, Smart Age, is because we actually help foreign companies and our Indian companies also to do procurement services, because in India, we have a special economic zone for financial services. So banks, insurance companies, trading companies, something like what bases the countries like Singapore have, and you have in Hong Kong and Dubai. We are trying to bring the same concepts very much into India. And that's how, taking that opportunity, we set up Smart Age projects also. Can you turn to the next screen, please? I'm not going to, you can go on the website. This is our board. And they have some very important people from the Ministry of, who have been a defense people, because we have a vertical for defense and aerospace logistics services also. Can you go to the next screen? Can you go to the next? Yeah. This is just a screen which shows our company's history. We were started in '91, and we are basically, our business is primarily foreign trade consultancy. We advise the importers and exporters from India and from abroad. We also handle a lot of expo and exhibition cargo. We are at practically all the fairgrounds of India. We have an office and we have a setup where we help the exhibitors to bring their goods. We are a authorized economic operator. We have a custom broking license at practically all the ports and major ports and seaports of India, and all the dry ports of India, also major dry ports in India. I wish to inform, tell you that in the customs tariff book, we have a customs book which gets released every year. There are 2 or 3 publishers who bring out. One of the publishers carry my name as a advisor, as I have taken a very deep interest in the subject of customs laws in India and got a recognition for that, being an advisor to the book, so important to mention. Of course, customs officers fight with me also for issues because taxes collection is very, very important for us. And we are, next screen please. We are located actually in 19 offices in India. If you see the map of India, we have the black star represents the free trade warehousing zone locations. So there we have an infrastructure and a logistics center, storage facility. I will be talking about a little bit more on FTWZ in the next, after the screen when we go to the last screen. And the customs clearance setup we have is the orange star. So we are well covered with across India and connected with the entire trade in India. Can go to the next one, please. Well, this is a little important slide. If you are going to do business with India, one has to understand, India, and we follow the key philosophy. What we follow is that we want to understand the business of our customers. In my country, in India, our direct taxes, which is called income tax collection is not very high. We are so many people, 1.3 billion people, but the number of people who are actually within the tax bracket are low. So the government draws a lot of support from the indirect taxes, and that is goods and services. So the customs revenue becomes very important. The GST revenue or the VAT, it becomes very important for collection. And because this revenue is important, it is administered also very, very strictly and very carefully. And that is why a logistics company in India can be more successful if the company understands the spirit of the laws and understands the logic behind the levy of the customs duty and advises the customers correctly after understanding the business. So what we do is that this is our policy, what we follow, our philosophy, that we understand the client's business. We are focused on saving time and money, and that's where the North-South corridor becomes very important for us, because it's going to save money and time both. And obviously every decision which is made is knowledge-based. Next one, please. Yeah, this is just a service which I had already covered in the last slide, but it is in more detail what SmartEdge does, what logistics company does, and what FTWZ does. I want to just focus a bit on FTWZ to tell you that if free trade warehousing zones are an area which is considered out of India for the purposes of taxation and customs. It is a territory beyond the customs territory of India. So you can imagine that wherever the FTWZs and SEZs are located, particularly the FTWZs, they are to be considered as if they are small pocket of Russia, because I'm now in Russia, so I have to tell that it is small Russia within India, which means the Russian companies who have business to do with India can actually ship the goods to India without even having an importer on record in India. You can actually ship out as many containers you want or any goods which you want. It will arrive the ports and it will enter into the free trade warehousing zone. And it will be the ownership of Russian companies. And similarly, you can even buy goods in India, actually, and keep it in FTWZ, it will be considered exported to Russia. So based on this regime, you can actually build your international business, and I'm sure that it will contribute in saving huge time and cost. We have had a good experience with many multinational companies and Indian companies who have worked, and that is the reason that we had to even make a special company for it. The next one, please. We are serving, both the companies are serving these industries which you can see, defense, aerospace, engineering. On the FTWZ side, you see about 3 more blue bands, which is food and why we have written food is because any food product which enters into India has much more compliances to be done. So one can bring the containers up to the port, up to our FTWZ, and then do the compliance. The second is we are amongst the highest bullion logistics company in India. Brinks is our partners. We do it for Brinks. But 85% of India's gold and silver, we are a very, very big importer. I think we are the number 2 importer in the world for bullion. And bullion, 85% of India's bullion passes through our facility. And that could only be possible because we started an infrastructure and a service on a FTWZ law. And next one. This is the slide I want to focus on. Our idea is that just now Badiga has said that there is a company here which is also, I'm sure, going to make a presentation. I'd be very keen to know the presentation. Our idea is that if free trade warehousing zones are there in India, if there are same type of free trade warehousing zones in Iran at the entry and exit ports, and also in Russia. Now, if these free trade warehousing zones, work on somewhat on the same regime and the same law what we have in India, I guess, and I feel that I'm very confident, in fact, that the trade will flourish and the trade will be able to mitigate a lot of their risks and problems which the trade may be facing. And it will greatly contribute in terms of, saving the cost and time and making it happen, making it possible. So I would be very keen and interested to partner with companies in Iran and companies in Russia who are sharing our thoughts and willing to invest in making the FTWZs at the entry and exit point and cooperate with us. And then we approach the trade with the solution. We can approach the Russian companies, the Iranian company, and the Indian companies to do foreign trade on our trade lane, which I call it as Russia, Iran, India trade and foreign trade and logistics lane. And this is my actual presentation. I'll be very happy to take any questions any hour at the time, even after the event. I'm around here, and anybody is, can come and talk to me, please. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, господин Нишьял Падия.
Thank you very much, Mr. Padilla-Nishal, for a very detailed presentation. We are so grateful that India are a reliable partner for us. We all want to reach India, and this cargo provided to the transportation flow from India to Russia is very important. However, we have some challenges and barriers, both for the infrastructure and for cargo flows. We have a complete turnaround of cargoes from towards east and towards towards south. And I would like to give the floor to railroad representative, Mr. Pavlov. During this turnaround of cargo flows, what role will be played by Russian railroads? Thank you very much for this opportunity. First, let me express my gratitude to be part of this excellent community in St. Petersburg. And St. Petersburg is a center of transportation flows in the Russian Federation. It's a major hub. And of course, as you said, we have this turnaround of cargo flows. However, the importance of ports, including the port of St. Petersburg, is still high. And here, as I represent Russian railroads, but we have the head of our branch in Northwest, Oktyabrskaya Railroad, so I will not tell his speech. The measures are taken by our partners to destroy the transportation and connectivity of our country with the outer world. But we do everything to confront it. Yes, indeed, cargo flows are making a U-turn and now move east and south. Specifically about the North-South ITC. It's important, but let me make a step back and talk about transportation independence of our country, the overall turnover, 445 million tons in 10 months. But the container shipments is 3.3 million containers, so minus 2%. This is the situation at the 10-month time. And we know that November and December are record months when it comes to shipments. So I'm positive that the 2%, the missing 2%, will be won. And this year, though we had to recut and reorient the entire Russian railroad system and make a U-turn, but we're absolutely positive that we'll hit the required figures. Now, destinations. We send cargoes eastward to the Azov and Black Sea and to the south. When it comes the avenue to the south, we are making this U-turn together with the state structures, DLTK, this Department of Transportation Corridors is an active player, and together at the federal level, we set up roadmaps that are to be approved quite soon. And there is a roadmap specifically about north to south corridor. India is a very important partner for us. And the mutual trade between India and Russia is growing, and now it has increased by 46%, 14 billiards. This line is already up, and we moved toward $30 billion of cargo turnover. And I'm very thankful to Mr. Shrikant Badiga and to Mr. Patia for their willingness to work. And I call upon working not only in free trade zones, but in other areas as well, and to work in this north-south corridor. Bandar Abbas port in Iran, please engage this port to move Russian goods in the new corridor that covers 3 branches. Eastern branch, that's the most reliable and coherent and link to the unified system of railworks in Russia, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Iran, and then onwards to Bandar Abbas and to India. Trans-Caspian route, of course, you understand it's over the Caspian Sea, and to the west. This leg is not yet complete. 162 kilometers are missing the railroads are missing in Iran territory. But the governments of 3 countries, Azerbaijan, Russia, and Iran, are pooling their efforts and negotiate on how to cooperate and to use this route. 3 countries, as you know, the railroad transport cannot be incoherent. The connectivity is the key. Therefore, the cooperation of all players is a must. That's why September 9 we signed the Baku Declaration, where all participants made a pledge to tackle the bottlenecks on this route. They are identified, the bottlenecks, and the programs of improvement is being agreed, and parties, Russia, Azerbaijan, and Iran, in coordination and under the deadlines, will tackle the bottlenecks to make sure that we have a similar, an entire flow of cargoes. The Ministry of Economic Development said that the total cargo flow by year 30 must be above 30 million tons in this specific corridor. So Russia does everything it must, like the cross borders at the border with Azerbaijan are already there is one cross border, and it doubled its capacity, and it works round the clock now. We use this capacity already now. In May, 5 trains were passed, but now through this cross border, 10 trains pass. Our colleagues in Azerbaijan, at their territory, are constructing the 2nd track, and as well as electric lines, overheads. And we have met our Iranian colleague recently. Mr. Belazurov met his counterpart Salehi, Mr. Salehi from Iran, and they identified bottlenecks in Iran, and Iranian railroads are starting tackling the challenges. This is the right coordination, and it will naturally help all of us to use this corridor. And in fact, it is being already used. Recently, an official visit of Kazakh president to Russia, to Moscow, happened, and two presidents discussed the Eastern Corridor. And we made certain agreements about the Eastern Corridor with all counterparts, with Russia and Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Iran made a deal about privileged tariffs rates for containers. That's a good move. It indicates that railroad community is ready to provide an end-to-end service and an end-to-end rate for our customers. They can use it. So Russian railroads have RZD Logistic as the prime contact for this business. So the audience who is here and who are connected to us remotely know that this is your prime contact for cargo transportation, RZD Logistics.
Altogether, the spheres which we focus on allows us to arrange shipments which are in demand, together with colleagues from Kazakhstan. Just 3 days ago, we agreed with them that we will arrange shipments for 2023, and it's tremendous amounts, actually, so that our shipping companies and our colleagues from Belarus could use north-south corridor, which is mentioned by all participants. Now, to summarize, Russian Railways is already using this corridor and will continue developing it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Dear Sergei Alexeyevich, indeed, Sergei Alexeyevich, if you don't mind, we will give a mic to the audience. Sergei, Mr. Sherbakov, St. Petersburg University of Economics. Our excellent moderator also mentioned the systematic solutions. Any transportation corridor or logistics corridor for its effective operation requires three items, actually more than that. Making single logistics operator, making one finance center, and third, arranging a monitoring center of business processes. Maybe this question should be answered by Sergei Alexeyevich or someone else. Free economic zones are nice, but they will not resolve what is required for the purposes of the international transportation corridor. I'm not even mentioning the training of personnel. Some people mentioned MBA programs based on our university to train people on port infrastructure. But these three key items, will they be resolved? Could you clarify? Indeed, I touched upon the fact that we are operating without free economic zones and we are working, but we are prepared to work based on Bandar-Abbas-Novasheva route. If we are offered a service from India, we are prepared. This is first. Second, as to logistics operator, I fully agree that in such complicated interstate corridors, they have to be managed and controlled based on unified rules and standards so that our clients understand that they use single source of information. Certainly we thought about it, and this is why I mentioned the Declaration of Baku, which reads, one of its items reads, creation of a unified system for management, for controlling of that corridor. And everyone accepted it. In which format this will happen, this will be a matter of negotiations. But the fact that there should be a single unified service and single operator, everyone understands that. It is already stated in the interstate agreement. 3 prime ministers signed such agreement. As to payments, it's already stated in that declaration, and our government is already preparing the draft interstate agreement on the for the eastern line, where we set the procedures for payments, for insurances, so that the customers and railway companies get guaranteed service in a unified format, so that all the payments are settled in a uniform way. No microphone is used. What about that center? Do you intend to arrange such a center? There was a discussion about it, but in the declaration does not read that such a center will be formed. But in further negotiations, I'm sure we will talk about it. Since you touched upon declaration of Baku and developing the western part, we have a trade representative of the Republic of Azerbaijan, Mr. Aliyev, Ruslan Aliyev. And within the issue that was raised by yourself, he will comment the intentions of the Republic of Azerbaijan in this respect. In terms of which sphere, meaning our interaction in north-south corridor. That topic of transportation corridors, it's not, I'm not a professional, I'm not an expert in that. But it is an important element of trade. This is why I'm presenting the tremendous amount of work done by my colleagues, and they're all brought together in the presentation. Apart from my presentation, Sergei briefly and very specifically talked about those items. So I will not stick to the slides. I will slowly move on, and you slowly can look through the slides. So if we get back to the topic of our discussion, when Natalia said what Mr. Abdelatifov mentioned, that there should be joint philosophy. It was also mentioned that we need to have north-south connection link. We understand that it's the oil and gas that needs to be transported, but apart from that, there's also a need to capture other goods. But you always have to resolve such an issue in a very prompt way. Luckily, such a topic is becoming more acute nowadays, because previously there's not much attention paid to transportation, to shipments between Russia and Azerbaijan. However, we enjoyed such a favorable customs regime, and there was short customs clearance performed at the border crossing points. But now, thanks to the declaration of Baku, the issue becomes more acute, and we have to switch. We have to turn. Azerbaijan is enjoying its geographical position, and we eventually serve a central part of this link. And apart from the purely eastern way and Azov Black Sea route, when running through Azerbaijan, especially by railways as well as by motorways, you cannot avoid Azerbaijan. But in this respect, I thought of focusing your attention to the economy of Azerbaijan. Our officials have announced the priorities of our development. To reiterate, oil and gas sector has been the main sector of our industry since the Soviet times. Now, agricultural products are also an important element of our economy. Until recent, we have paid tremendous attention to the development of the internal tourism. For several decades, Azerbaijan invested a lot in the tourist infrastructure, in the transportation, passenger transportation infrastructure. Along with that, we had to remember the cargo transportation routes. And now Azerbaijan can utilize all those opportunities open to us. Azerbaijan started investing a lot in rebuilding and construction of new sections of Baku-Tbilisi-Kars east-west transportation corridor, which was open for the first time several years ago. Not all of the objectives were achieved, but we have enjoyed a growth in shipments via that corridor. All of that infrastructure for receipt of cargoes on the Caspian Sea is ready. And there are investments in further development of that infrastructure. When it comes to the role of Azerbaijan, it feels itself fully accountable for bringing its infrastructure to the operational condition at a very high quality level. And we invest ourselves, we repair ourselves. Probably a month ago, two ministers of economic development of both Azerbaijan and Russia visited our border to identify the bottlenecks and the ways to resolve issues associated with those bottlenecks. And generally speaking, the work performed by Azerbaijan is underway, and motorways and those highways running to Russia, they get rebuilt. There's a lot of information also brought on screens on my slides, and Azerbaijan is purely a reliable customer, fulfilling its obligations. Of course, we also experience complications, and we are always ready for discussion. But speaking of the global projects, and this is one of the global projects, because initially the discussion was about supplying from Western Europe to ports in India, but now we are looking at this corridor in this dimension, in this section. We are happy that Russia and Azerbaijan are agreeing on all the items. And luckily, Russia has a historical track of relations with Iran and the ways to agree with Iran. And we have to understand that there is a growing trade between Russia and India. So why do we need north-south corridor? We need it because the turnover of Russia and India trade is growing rapidly. And we saw a lot of information in the presentation of Sergei that it takes about 50 days supplying those cargoes by sea, but by that corridor we can reduce it down to 25 days. So we see clear advantages. There are corresponding work groups which are tackling those issues, and there is a plan. And therefore, once again, to reiterate that the interaction between Azerbaijan and Russia, as well as Iran, everything is underway. And again, Azerbaijan is reliable, and we fulfill our obligations. I'll be glad to take the questions from the audience, but once again, to emphasize one more thing, that it's not only resolving the issues of infrastructure, but also adjusting our legislation and training personnel to operate that route. So in this respect, it seems to me that within the scope of our cooperation, I don't know if it's mentioned in the roadmap, whether there is anything mentioned about the training of employees, but I have to agree with Mr. Abdulatifov that indeed it sounds like a prophecy that everything will be built, but no one will be available to operate that infrastructure. So it's not a simple story to operate that whole flow. Which companies will get involved in taking care of the financial side? So this is the interaction which needs to start. It should be probably mentioned separately in those work groups, as well as involving the universities of the 3 countries involved, which I mentioned. And I would say that employees play a crucial role, and I'll be glad taking questions from the floor. Thank you very much, Ruslan. Perhaps there will be some questions afterwards, or maybe now.
Hello, sir. So I really appreciate these north-south corridor countries which are involved. So we are logistic, and we have office in India also, in Dubai. So recently we carried the cargo via Azerbaijan by train, which was from Astara to Moscow in 5 days by train, which is really, I appreciate. That facility I got from Azerbaijani company. So the problem right now we have is reefer containers, sir. Now we are looking, we have a lot of reefer cargo which is coming from India, maybe more than, around 3,000 grapes container in the season from India goes to Russia. Now the problem that we have, it's a reefer platform that we need from Astara to Moscow and St. Petersburg. So is there any facility that we can use for the reefer?
Unfortunately, the speaker is not using the microphone.
Эта проблема очень хорошо.
Indeed, we know about this challenge a lot because I meet different people from different groups at different levels, and I heard about this challenge, yes. That there isn't, the containers are insufficient. That's a challenge, but we can't instantaneously provide everything. We do it stepwise according to priorities. To deliver cargoes, we need the road. The road is there. Then we need containers and we need staff. So the mechanism must be debugged, first developed and then debugged. The lack of containers in Azerbaijan, that's a challenge, quite stubborn. Well, demand will push forward the supply. That's great that you have partners who deliver, who started delivering cargoes. We heard that from Astana to Russia, to Moscow in particular, it is possible to deliver cargoes. Well, I hope that because there are so many parties like Azerbaijan railroads and Russian railroads who are our partners are interested, we will have things moving in this direction. But your question was about refrigerating containers.
Rest of the things we solve.
Indeed, thank you. I announced the name of the company that, on behalf of Russian railroads, they deal with shipments. It's named the name of this company, RGD Logistics. Go onto the website and find RGD Logistics. So we've already started working on refrigerating containers, on reef containers. We're already dealing with it. Please contact this company, and we will make a special presentation for Iran, not only for Iranian colleagues, but we also invite all interested parties from Turkmenistan, from India, come over to us because we've already started working on it. Of course, you will not get this solution tomorrow because first, the infrastructure to service reef containers is to be set up. But from Astana to Moscow and to St. Petersburg, the service will be provided pretty soon, be assured. There was a prompt from the audience, but also I have it in my presentation. Agro Express has two parts, including a reef part, a refrigerating part. In Azerbaijan, we had some challenges. I mean, Azerbaijani railroads, and they placed an order. RGD Logistics, if there are any representatives here, we will be happy to talk to you separately. Great. That's good that we palpated these challenges. It means that we don't have enough communication. Indeed, in my country, we have business people, and in fact, the corridor started working. We have this turnover in good flows, and we now will increase the volumes. Thank you very much for your side comment. In fact, our platform, this communication, allows us to share information between our countries, to showcase capabilities of every country, to see that Russia, Azerbaijan, India, other countries make a major effort, and this conference is a platform to share information. You touched infrastructural challenges. Let me go a little bit in reverse. Azerbaijan mentioned that they try to improve the infrastructure. They make great efforts. They control infrastructure. They make investments. What about Russian railroads? Viktor Georgievich, my question is to you. Can you pick up on where Sergei left and share more details on Russia's efforts? Thank you. Let me first welcome all participants in this forum. Good afternoon, colleagues and dear Presidia members. Hello. It's been 2 days of intense work today and yesterday. And our experts from Oktyabrskyi Railway appreciate highly the outcomes of our work. In fact, all the things we discuss in our community are focused at promoting the new corridor. We heard a lot about North-South corridor for a long time, but lots of words, not many practical steps, because now it is in high demand. And so far, it's a narrow corridor to digest all the required cargoes. Oktyabrskaya branch of Russian Railroad is the biggest. We have 75,000 people employed, over almost 10,000 kilometers in total length, 103 million tons per annum. That's we upload and unload about 30 million tons per annum. That's we are a giant with a great scope of works. And our throughput, the transit part, without uploading, unloading, it's about 25%. in addition to million tons that we move across our rails. It's clear, colleagues. Sergei Alexeyevich just briefed you on the general strategy of Russian railroads, but I will go one level deeper, and we will talk about application. What we do at Oktyabrski Railroad. Starting last year, we sent first train through Western corridor, through Azerbaijan to Iran and onwards to Bandarabas port and onwards to Novasheva port. A Finnish a good from Finland together with the Norway Logistics Company. That was a test shipment, and we saw the advantages, but also some serious challenges. As Sergei Alexeyevich said, that 162 kilometers of truck shipment between Astana and Reshta. Well, let me rephrase it. Today, we involve partners, cargo forwarders, not only they are from the central part of Russia. And if the volume grows, then it can block our corridor, and we will have jams in the corridor. The next route we tested out was across the Caspian Sea, together with our partners, Eurosib. So we brought goods to the Ala Astrakhan port, first by rail, and then from the port by sea to Mirabat port, loaded into Iranian railroads and to Bandarabas, and then by sea to Novasheva. All in all, the route is good, but port capacities are insufficient, especially in Ala port in Astrakhan. So again, it is clear for us that the volumes requested today is far beyond the corridor capacity. The eastern corridor through Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Iran, through Iranian ports to India again. This part of the corridor was tested with several shipments, and it became clear that the today's throughput requires to make the priority for this leg of the corridor. The eastern branch must be given the priority. North-south corridor was our focus for the 3 months, and we saw a 5-fold growth. But if you include the western branch towards Novorossiysk, it's part of north-south corridor, 140,000 tons was shipped. So we then have a double growth. So let us take pulp and paper and wood industry for review. Therefore, the lion's share is indeed attributed to these cargoes from northwest and from south of Russia, from central Russia. In Iran and India, the total growth was 2.4-fold, and the total shipment of pulp and paper goods was at 8%. Dynamics. You can see in the slide in 2021, in 10 months from northwest to east, we had 2,000 tons and 314 tons towards northwest. It means a 2-fold decrease and 5-fold growth to South and South Asia, Southeastern Asia. So we see in practice the actual U-turn taken in a shipment of pulp and paper products. Marketing research was run to understand the general cargo base we have today in northwestern Russia and central Russia. I'll reiterate, Oktyabrski Railroad covers 11 constituencies of Russia with some major city agglomeration like Moscow and Moscow region. So potentially, we identify 345 customers. Some of them are quite major in pulp and paper processing, PET Kuranta, Karelia Pulp, Segezha Group, and our partners in shipment across Russian railroads are our daughter company, RGD, Logistics, Eurosib, and Modov. With them, we already run a number of projects. This is a comparison of shipments in north-south corridor with all the routes used today, and this is the summary from the eastern branch through Astana, 7,500 kilometers. The delivery day is 32 to 35 days. The cost per 1 ton of transported goods through the infrastructure, $419. That's the first line. Now, second line, Trans-Caspian. As you see, the distance in kilometers, 7,300 kilometers. The cost, 436 per ton. Eastern kilometers, then cost in 40-feet container, it's 9,490. 29 containers through Novorossiysk is 8,000, and through Suetsk it's about 7,000 per 40-feet container. Now, Eastern Corridor, which we believe is more advantageous, through Russia, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Iran, and onward from Bandarabas to Novasheva, India. You see the summary figures in the columns. You see the bits of infrastructure costs, including through Russian railroads. The movement of a 40-feet container per 1 kilometer of infrastructure, be it railroad or truck road or sea. And you see the 1,520 generation as you see the Iranian 1.3 railroad, 1 kilometer or 40 feet container, 0.8, 0.8, and 0.8. This is the railroad's infrastructure per 1 feet container, for 1 kilometer, 40 feet container in Russia, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan, Iran, and India 1.4 per 1 kilometer. And the differences between the track lengths, widths, excuse me. So, colleagues, to make seamless technologies possible, we must do it to be competitive with traditional transportation via the Suez Canal. So we run negotiation with carriers for track 1520 and Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and of course with Iran colleagues responsible for logistics through Iran, and of course with our maritime transportation partners. So I wanted to voice these challenges because when you start promoting a new corridor, any logistic avenue, it will run into logistic challenges. So we as Oktyabrski Railroad, we bring together logistic community, park owners, cargo-based, both uploaded, unloaded. and the information which we get from our partners and friends and our Indian colleagues like Mr. Pathia, we heard your unique opportunities to use terminals for loading, uploading of Russian goods. We will share our contacts and we will provide this information to cargo owners, and they will have a clear understanding whom to contact in building optimal, the best supply chain between Russia, the Iranian Republic, and India. Thank you. Thank you very much, Viktor Georgievich, for your highly informative presentation.
Добавить.
Well, indeed, just wanted to add one more thought. You can name the problems, and you can also call it targets, not problems, because problem sounds very firm. However, due to the current global situation, this is improper calling it a problem. We should call it targets, objectives, rather than problems. And I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Miloshkin, Sergei Miloshkin. He is heading a special economic zone, Lotus, in his sphere. Lotus is part of the north-south transportation corridor. We've been talking about such zones. Sergei was the first to discover the opportunities of such zones in interaction with Iran, and now they're dealing with India and Azerbaijan. Do you see, Sergei, if there is any movement forward to receive the support? Do you feel the support of moving forward? Thank you for the floor given to me, and we've always felt a support on your side. Dear colleagues, thank you for touching upon the issue of the special economic zones. I'll be talking about the economic zone and the corridor, and I will add something to it. Astrakhan Oblast, this whole cluster was established back in 2015. Products are there. Where do we move? The markets are in the Caspian Sea area. And we asked logistic companies whether there's any route. The corridor was fixed in 2015, but to deliver cargo by railway or by vessels became impossible. In 2019, there was a report to the president on part of the Astrakhan Oblast. Based on that, there was a decree of the government to develop the north-south corridor. We ourselves in Astrakhan Oblast got support together with our colleagues, and eventually there was the first decree signed by the government to develop the Ala port. That project is underway, and I'll briefly talk about it. There's a whole set of measures which we started developing, and basically all the issues arising were tackled thanks to those measures. Some of the items are frozen at this point. I'm not able to cover all of them because it's a whole process of work meetings, and we are in the process of development and implementation. It will be implemented both in Russian Federation and inter-country relations, Russia and the countries of the Caspian Sea. We are focusing on the southern area. As was mentioned, speaking when it comes to the corridor, initially the idea was to have it run from Europe to India through the group of countries, Russia. Then that process would join by Azerbaijan and other Caspian countries. And for 19 years, we've been discussing the options of arranging such a corridor. After 2019, process started moving eventually. On the 24th of February, the concept has changed. In our calculations, we still consider Europe for further transit to Iran and further on. So the route is implemented. We all know about the drop in the reloading capacities in Bronka and the Baltic Sea. We all visited that port, and the Baltic ports, they ceased shipping for various reasons. As to the Black Sea, actually the whole European part of Russia, which used to ship their ready goods, which used to receive goods from Europe, and let me bring you an example, just for the construction industry of Moscow, for the procurement purposes, over $5 billion of products were procured to Moscow, and therefore there were trucks running back and forth to Moscow. But if you look at the forecast numbers, comparing 2019 plus 15%, now everything has changed completely. It's the same 5 billion which need to be procured from somewhere. We would go to China, but not everything is available there, and Transsib capacities are not available. We are interested in India. How did we transport of ready goods from India for the amount of $5 billion? The whole logistical sector of Russia is looking for its niches and new approaches. It's a principal position. And therefore, approaching Caspian Sea region and getting access to Indian Ocean, this is a road which will allow a road of life for St. Petersburg and Leningrad Oblast. And also, there could be some other circumstances arising in the Gulfs. As to the efforts taken towards south, what comes to mind is development of railways, and when it comes to signing of the agreements for shipping of goods, we support all the measures taken. We're talking about now, and here and now. Every infrastructure project is the deadlines. The project in Iran is still being designed. How long will it take? I suppose another 5 years, considering design, considering assignment of lands and construction, eventual construction. Do we wait for another 5 years? Should we wait for switching on of that line? We should continue living somehow. We need to take that cargo and transport it. The eastern route, it is on and running. Now, we come and we ask, what, considering the crossing points, changing the track, the wheels for the different size of tracks, it's only 4 million. Quite a lot of amendments taken, but what does it mean, 4 million or 24 million? There are different fertilizers. They'll be happy to load and run that amount to Bandarabas. We can look at the different railway routes. They're not even considering such a small amount of 24 million. So question gets to be, how do we transport containers? By 2030, we'll bring 30 million tons of those goods. And this is what we kept mentioning and what we said in our discussions, and I'm thankful to Sergei. We will have an important meeting tomorrow with a company. The calculated numbers are such that 3 million tons, this is for containers next year. The first part, the preparatory part, is ready. We visited, we looked at the cranes, which cranes are to operate by the beginning of 2024 in the first quarter. Hopefully, we will start the first container vessels to run and bring cargoes to Azali. And the increase of the flows for investors after Zuburun and the seaport of Alya with a huge container terminal. And this is also a tremendous amount to be processed. This is everything speaking down south from Astrakhan. 80% were transported by railways, and we are very thankful for the support provided. We need to join our efforts to provide the service of railway transportation down to Alya port so that it operates clockwise. And we also look forward to negotiations and new parties getting involved so that the logistics and transportation centers get constructed and commissioned thanks to the signed agreements between Turkmenistan, Iran, and India. And this is a good port, which in terms of its port capacities, like what we're already doing in Alya and Astrakhan ports. Secondly, when we get a port, we provide proper interaction with the railways. Then we will involve the internal waterways. I will avoid talking about the internal waterways between Astrakhan and Nizhny Novgorod region. That section is certainly underway to be considered. Now, another issue about Caspian Sea, a lack of lines, vessels running on specific lines. I'm talking as a coordinator. This is why, on behalf of everything else, we will be involving the vessels which will be operating per schedule along the lines between Russia and Iran. This line will be subsidized by both countries involved. And for the containers which are to be brought by railways to Alya port, we will provide the necessary vessels by specific hours, by specific schedule. This is target number 2, and huge work is performed by the Ministry of Industry. Container vessels are being designed and their contracts signed for construction of new vessels. So next year there will be vessels available in the market, and further on in the upcoming years there will be new vessels available. Now, speaking of Iran, we are closely interacting with zones in Iran. First agreements were signed back in 2019 with the zone Sicily. And we will go to Baku soon, as we recently visited Baku for the forum. We met the management of Alya port. But now, speaking about there is a professional team working on this route, the Trans-Caspian route, and some of the additional elements are being discussed upon, and some efforts will be taken to coordinate its operation. Now, speaking of Iran, there are some restrictions, namely Iranian railways. Around 480 million tons are transported by Iran. All transportation is performed by Iranian railways. So if we add a million here and a million there, you can add another 10 million, but you will not be able to transport that amount just because there are limitations to their railways. I'm not to disclose all the peculiarities of negotiations. This work is underway. Of course, that's right. And we fully support this work about the interaction with Iran. It's a whole process which will take a certain amount of time. And we suggest another way of resolving this issue. It's underway with a whole range of parties involved, with the Ministry of Transportation of Iran, with the Ministry of Economic Development of Iran, and we're talking about developing the joint ventures for motorway transportation, in addition, for additional transportation of goods which are not, which could not be possibly transported by railways due to railway limitations. Hopefully everything will work out and we'll have such a service available. Hopefully that company will offer such motorway transportation services together with Russian and Iranian railways. Another important issue is ports in in the Indian Ocean. We visited Bandar Abbas several weeks ago. It's a huge port indeed. I was part of a big delegation from Russia. Of course, locals were impressed. There are several ports in Iran which could get involved. Iran becomes such an exit point, so to say, for the Russian goods, since we're looking at the markets of the friendly countries. We can utilize the capacities of Bandar Abbas, but other ports, they have limitations. Their issues have to be tackled. And therefore, there should be the necessary base for such a operation, for such a increased amount of shipments through Iran. There are some elements which get developed, and this system starts operating. When it comes to India, indeed, we're working closely with them, with their different economic zones. And there's also Mundra, one of a huge container port. They have a particular interest in developing the services. There are services being developed together with Chabahara over to Shanghai from Bandar Abbas also, but there are some specifics about it.
Bandar Abbas means that Indian shipping companies do not call into there due to some restrictions. They go through Arabic ports, and there is some extra transshipment and extra transit legs. Some other complications, if we talk about the strait, the narrow strait. When there are challenges, then the channel can be blocked. And probably we must to consider Chibakara. It's an ocean port, and there are no challenges associated with it. That's a broad picture. We try to be very dynamic. Early next year, we plan to launch the service at the Caspian Sea, affording logistic companies to use this service and plan their container cargoes at the Caspian Sea. Through the next year, we will complete first port structures and link them to Russian railroads. Now we have started working it. We have the access road to Ala port. By the end of the next year, it will be finished. And by a collective effort, and thank you for speakers who brought up figures, displayed them, we want to make these services together comfortable to our clients. And offering insurance, staff, finances, etc. There will be a unified operator. A unified operator as named, as brought forward by Russian railroads. This is somewhat different because we are talking about Indian cargo base, and therefore we need to involve Indians with their multimodality. And therefore, this is more than just railroads, it's wider. That's a general picture. I am very active in meeting people, and we will be thankful if you contact us, and you see we've achieved a lot just in 1 year. Thank you very much, Sergei Yurievich. You offered a very comprehensive issue. The first part, in terms of India, we touched upon it, the cooperation through open special economic zones. So you, I hope, share contacts with your Indian colleagues and move forward in there. You said that we must act here and now, because plans are good things, but we must to act now. What about truck transportations in the north to south corridor? With this, I would like to give the floor to another speaker, how we can improve truck transportation and reduce the costs. The president of transportation experts and specialists, he is the chairperson of this association. I feel like I am a fan of a different club because everyone is from railroads and I talk about truck transportation. So a year ago, I spoke about multi-segment road trains. And I hope that last year, this topic was accepted kindly. The idea of having road trains as part of the North-South corridor is very timely and in demand. I'll be brief. What challenges we face and we can't tackle them. Though ITC North-South helps us a lot, but the challenges are stubborn. My presentation is not launched yet, but I hope it will be soon launched. I was approached after the event by the management of a major logistic company. They have their auto fleet, a huge truck fleet, and unmanned pilot was launched recently. Rosdorny, a research institute in Russian roads, they decided to run a pilot unmanned trucks operation, but we need to have a right legal base. The technology is there. You want to use unmanned cars, that's good, but we want to see that they are more efficient than classical trucking. And therefore, it was decided to have it a try and to use a multi-chain road train with 2 semi-trailers and 1 tractor. But let me wrap up the unmanned vehicle transportation. You saw figures that between Moscow and St. Petersburg on the highway, about 25% will be the efficiency and cost saving if unmanned traffic is run. But our figures were different in reality. That's why it was decided to use multi-chain road trains at this highway between Moscow and St. Petersburg with the unmanned tractor, and the pilot will be in the cabin initially. The presentation cannot be launched, unfortunately, and I spent my night working on it. I wasted my night working on it. So, we must fit into weight and dimension limits. It would be so nice if my presentation was displayed with all the figures on the screen. Well, in fact, the task was much more complicated because we ran our calculations, and compared to last year, our task is now multifaceted. So to make road trains, especially in multi-sections, some of them were used at the highway between Moscow and Finland. It is a shorter, and they were shorter and simpler that we want to plan now. But these road trains were used. And they brought some advantages for voluminous goods, 150 cubic meters. That was an extra volume in the road train. But now we want not even bigger volumes, but bigger weight. I'm just showing it in words. I wanted to display everything. And last year, we went along the classical route using European technologies, Scandinavian to be precise, to have one united module system. Europe idea is that there are two key norms: the length of loading and the lengthy and the short and the long one, 13.6. Depending on the combination, you can make either too short or too. That is a classical format, or one lengthy road train, or Scandinavian formats that were actively used when road train was 25.25 meters, one lengthy and one short segment. And now we're moving to contemporary road trains. Great. My next slide shows that what was promised saving, the commercial speed will be increased by 25% by unmanned cars. We don't understand how they will get it. Because driven by humans, they are quite fast, especially on highway beyond Tver. And self-cost will be reduced by 10 to 20% if driven by unmanned transport. The classical idea, already made clear by our railway communities, is to reduce the cost of transportation 1 ton or 1 cubic meter. The distance between Moscow and St. Petersburg is close to 700 kilometers. A sore point of trucking is to make sure that drivers get proper health and occupation conditions, so they can drive the truck just in one shift. So 2 semi-trailers and 1 truck, and we have the run-in trolley, which connects the segments. Logistics principle. The key one is in A point, we see traditional transportation flows. In majority of routes, all trucks go in parallel. And the lower segment B shows that's a multi-flow where we use between terminals the high volume transportation. It's like a railway analog. European logic is simple. Better to use what we already have. These are short modules put together, or one long module. The main advantage is that at some distances we can use a combined road train. And then when we do shorter destination, we can bring in other trucks and tractors and bring in separate parts of the road train. Less fuel is spent per unit of cargoes and less tons per 1 kilometer, a reduced cost of ton per kilometer, and less road damage. As I was coming to the event today, I read a newspaper saying, the article said that in Northwest Russia, there is a lack of drivers. The capacity is covered only by 74%. And I was surprised because many multinationals left Russia, so there are some spare hands, but still they feel a lack of drivers. 3 short modules, each 7.82 meters long, or 2 long modules, 17.6, or 2 short, 7.82, and 1 long, 13.2. When we prepared this idea, transportation between Moscow and St. Petersburg, we took a research from Sweden, together with the Ministry of Transportation in Sweden and Volvo Trucks. They ran a research, and they examined the route between Gothenburg and Malmö of 280 kilometers, run on a plain, leveled surface, and they calculated both voluminous and pallet cargoes. My example shows the transportation of palleted cargoes, the weight 600 kilos, the size 80 by 120 centimeters, European size, to transport 200 European pallets by different types of transportation. As you see, different about 100 pallet go in the smallest truck, and you can get just 3 in transportation of 200 pallets. And you see, the difference will be twofold. That is logical. Swedes believe that the economy, the cost saving, is like this.
На конкретном примере.
Specific example of 200 pallets, they took not 90, but 100 cubic meters, since they have limitations on height. And accordingly, 6 units of 100 and 3 units of 200. And for Europe, they pay specific attention to environment. Unfortunately, this issues it's raised, but to some small extent, minus 27%. This is what we get in terms of CO2 emissions. And the previous line, we see a reduction in the fuel consumption. And the last line is reduction from almost 500 meters to 294 meters, 96 meters. What we started facing, getting back to our Russian issues, for long, and we have faced the access limitations. Primarily, access limitations are the ones which we have faced. Summer this year, there were maximum loads on accesses accepted in the Eurasian transportation corridors. First, let's talk about good items. It's only one category of roads left in the agreement. The load is the only, namely 10 tons per axis, not 11.5 as in the other countries, only 10 tons. So, as we see, we have to have two axes in such a motor train. The load is almost 18 tons, and in Russia the acceptable is 16. In Europe and in Sweden it's 19 tons. In Russia it's only 16. So we apply a trailer, and the issue gets to be more complicated because we get the overload according to Russian rules. Utilizing such wheels, you get another ton reduction. So therefore it's 25 tons for the second semi-trailer. The second semi-trailer is anyways smaller than the first one. Ministry of Transportation was very surprised when we asked for a permission to bring 80 tons. Yes, and indeed, I did not mention initially that such motor trains were intended to operate only on M11 motorway from Sheremetyevo towards St. Petersburg. A similar option can be used in the transportation corridor. Ivan, probably we could make our participants allow our participants get acquainted with your slides later on. Of course, this aspect which you mentioned is very important, and I know that you are firm moving forward, but there should be a systematic approach to the condition of our motorways, whether this additional load can be transported along our motorways. We missed one slide. If I may, one more slide to show to you. I hope that many of you heard about Platon system when it got implemented. the equivalent of a 10-ton load being transported along the Russian motorways. I understand because I work myself in the control agency, and we know that there is an active transportation by motorways. The next slide, if you could show it. The main idea is such that loads in Russia are calculated as the amount of tons per axis weight. Our motorways are a sacred cow, if I may call it, in Russia. In other countries, they calculate the useful load per axis. So if you look in the right column, the comparison versus the useful load, equivalent of 10 tons, as compared with the useful load. So in terms of economic effect, this is pretty clear. You brought the proper arguments, and to develop upon this discussion of North-South corridor, I would like to give the floor to Special Economic Zone AMRA from Republic of Abkhazia. Certainly, new routes is under scrutiny by Russia, and you could also tell us about your sphere of operations.
Добрый день.
Hello. It's again from trucks to special economic zones. I represent Abkhazia by the Black Sea, or the Amra, is over 7,000 hectares, covering 18 kilometers of the shoreline of Abkhazia. It was established in 2016 per decree, per order of the President of Abkhazia. It expected to operate till 2060, and it is RST Core private company to operate the economic zone. It's located on this slide. It's demonstrated on the map. RST Core mission is to attract investment and boost investment. From amongst the attractive items for investors is reduction of formalities, open legislation and transparent legislation, which allows simplified registration rules. And it also declares itself providing the most favorable conditions for attracting investments in transport, sea, rail, infrastructure. SEZ AMRA is a territory where special conditions for conducting business activities apply, and the procedure of a free customs zone is applied as well. There are three main factors for operation the OZ AMRA. If you could put on the screen the next slide. Aristico is one of the participants of the international association since 2016. Aristico is one of the comfort areas for residents, which can concentrate specifically on production, and then it is the production company which undertakes the other functions. Aristico considers that one of the main targets is providing comfortable conditions for residents, which would then concentrate purely on production. And in accordance with that, Aristico uses single source of information for the residents. As to the unique peculiarity of this zone is that the shore is located by the ports, for with the container terminals. It is allowed for the foreign investors to become 100% owners of the zone, and it could be the foreign entities involved in the operation of the zone. According to the legislation, it could be Russian and other foreign capital involved in operation of Restico. Apart from that, residents of Amra are allowed to get a link to a very industry-intensive market of the Russian Federation. There are some specific calculations brought on screen in the tables. Let me reduce my speech. It would be nice to see a video. The next part of the presentation will be covered by Anore Algaram, the founder of Amra. To which extent is the infrastructure developed? The access roads to your zone, like from the side of Georgia as well, just to save us time to be specific. Probably a few words about the project. It's over 10 years old, and it happened from scratch. It seems that we were envisaging that it would be of interest, and it will serve for many years. All the authorities are given to us, and the area is covering the border adjacent zone. The port, Achemchira port, has the depth of 9 meters, and therefore the infrastructure is available for the operation of this zone. Mostly cargoes arrive from Turkmenistan over to Baku and then transported over to Abkhazia, and we think that the capacities of Abkhazia are underestimated. Ola, Astrakhan, Makhachkala, Baku ports can be applied, and of course we do not serve as competitors to those ports, but at least we see that there is a chance of cargoes running from Russia to Turkey through us. It's clear what is happening around now. And this is a point on the Black Sea which is not overloaded, and it is an enormous port right there available. And we remember the events many years ago when the Soviet Union lost Batumi and the other big ports on the Black Sea. And the lack of the deficit of cargoes which could be transported from Russia amounts 900 million tons. And the infrastructure of Amra allows to bring cargoes by railways. There are specific stations at the border of the SEZ Amra. The project is signed by 4 companies. From the beginning of New Year, there will be all systems made available. Water supply, there is a concrete covered platform. It's the territory of new opportunities, and if someone gets interested, we are announcing that we are there, we are available. Briefly speaking, we bring cargoes from Tatarstan. We provide transit. We're the first company to provide transit to Turkey. And other colleagues, if you get interested, we never promoted this information that we were preparing to this phase. We are involving now a very serious company which is performing the design of the terminals. It will be the large-scale companies which will be involved in the process. We stay away from politics. We are to provide the logistics. So we hope that other companies working with us will help us implementing it. And it is nice, very briefly, that you announced those details. Thank you very much. I would like also to talk about the digitalization by Alexander Bareika, because you cannot avoid the digitalization when speaking about the corridor north-south. Dear colleagues, please put on the screen my presentation. When talking about sports, one would feel all right. Well, when an issue of digitalization is being resolved, certainly when you live in the 21st century, you cannot develop shipments along the international transport ways, not paying specific attention to the systems of control and operation, interaction of various participants of the shipments, and processing of the documents to the digital format. Could you put on slide 4? Dear colleagues, a lot was said about development of the physical infrastructure, about tackling the bottlenecks issues, construction of new infrastructure units. There is a range of issues which remains in the sphere of arrangement of interaction and the tackling of the outdated technology issues. Certainly, to provide for efficiency in current conditions, you have to apply digital systems which have to be applied in integrated format linked to all participants of the shipment process. They should be interoperational. Next slide. And in the Russian Federation, as well as other countries which are parts of the international corridor, the strategy of digital transformation of transportation sphere are accepted. The system developed by the Ministry of Transportation and approved by the government of Russian Federation involves arrangement of digitalization for the international transportation corridors. And next slide. In the Eurasian Economic Union, digitalization projects are underway aimed at forming the ecosystem of digital transportation corridors of the Union. In cooperation with our comrades from China, a range of projects has been implemented to arrange the motorway shipments, which is probably the most complicated part in arrangement of the proper control function. According to agreement of 2018, the acceptance of GLONASS system on the whole span of the area from China to Russia was confirmed back in 2019. A pilot area was set up, and last year in 2021, per order of the Ministry of Transportation, contour system was developed, which will be part of the Rostransnadzor, the supervisory body. That system proved efficient, not only aimed at linking the shipment lines, but also providing for the fair competition conditions and among the participants of shipments. This especially relates to transporting the goods from the People's Republic of China. To sum up what was said in course of my brief speech, the examples which were brought on the screen represent the elements, the bricks, which should lay base to the integrated digitalization system in order to provide for efficient transportation of cargoes within the corridor north-south. Digitalization implies digitalization of transportation documents, cargo documents, and switching to digitalized permits for international cargo shipments, for the actual application of them, digitalization of the border crossing points operations, and that was the first issue raised in the course of our discussion, arrangement of a unified system of transportation. And it should not be only 3 states involved, but other states, since this corridor will be running through several states, for proper coordination of those efforts on international level. Alexander, thank you very much for accuracy and being brief. You cannot avoid the digitalization. We have another 2 speakers. I do understand. Certainly, I apologize. We were delayed ourselves. What about lunch? Well, speaking of lunch, you said Delco also thought of showing their presentation if they're present here. Probably just 2 comments, and it seems that we'll have to finalize it.
Практиков, правильно, тех, кто
Of course, we want to hear something from the field, from the practical side of our talks. I'm Dmitry, Delco Logistics Director. We are truck carriers, ordered carriers. We run 2,000 trucks across Russia and internationally. Our presentation is together with Araman Alverdiyev. He represents a logistic company from Azerbaijan. And we plan to start a joint project just recently. Delca, my company, has a running projects with trailers. When you have a highway and along the highway you have tractors with the semi-trailers, which allows to observe health and safety standards for our drivers, but at the same time efficiently save costs. W&E Forward have international experience. Now they send trucks from Azerbaijan to Russia to Turkey, and they receive goods from Turkmenistan. We plan to do the same, and we expect that this project primarily reduce the delivery dates through faster speed, and then trucks will move along national territories. Every country, therefore, will benefit. I will not delay you. Come and see me personally, and my partner and I will answer your questions. It's going to be an interesting project. Dmitry, with this, I think it's a good promise, and we will briefly summarize this section. Thank you for your participation, for being open and forthcoming for your efforts in development of North-South ITC. We have challenges ahead of us, but in collective effort, we will resolve them. Thank you.